staying tuned to ZeN TV. Now, the biggest story that's been on Twitter or online all this week is about the Charleston shooting that took place, where 9 black Americans were killed in a church by a, do we call him terrorist or do we call him mentally ill?
Mentally ill.
Shane?
Well, you've told everyone about what I was going to say now, so...
Okay.
No, I mean, it's coming across on the TV as it being a hate crime. And what you have to understand is the person, the gunman, has decided one day to get in his car and travel, I think it was 110 miles, to a certain church, sit in the service for over an hour, asked to speak to the minister, and then once seeing the minister, is killed him and killed 8 of the people with him as well.
Bad sermon, or...
Sorry?
Bad sermon.
Yeah, I don't think you like the song that was saying.
Yeah,
That's what it was.
right.
But so for me, a hate crime, I understand what a hate crime is, but you know, is it a random act or isn't it a random act? The question I would ask is, you know, if I was to commit a hate crime, you know, I don't think I'd have to get in my car and drive 110 miles away down the road to go to a certain church, you know. So,
but that church is related to the civil rights movement. So do you think that's the reason why it was a target?
Well, it is. I know if I pronounce his name right, it's Clementa Pinckney, the minister that was at the church, and he is very highly thought of around the area, very community minded. Highly spoke of in the fact that they do say that they remind him of the MLK of the day, you know. So that's how highly regarded he is around the area. I know for a fact he was, at the time, he was pushing for the Charleston police force to all be wearing body cameras after the Walter Scott shooting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, whether he was a target or not, I don't know. Was it a random act? Was it a hate crime? These are all questions.
Was it a terrorist act?
Was it a
Or
terrorist
could
act?
it be that they've been preconditioned to, on point of trigger pointing, to enact something that they've been pre-trained to do, either through drugs, as we were saying before, or through I don't know if you've seen one of the conspiracy theory films with Mel Gibson, Catcher in the Rye. He feels like he always needs to buy the book Catcher in the Rye. Now there is actually a connotation for Catcher in the Rye from history. But if you look at all these through history and these situations that happen, that they trigger responses in people and kids that don't know why they're doing it. You won't know the kid why he did it.
Yeah.
These are things that are triggering into, and what they do. What if you look into the history of it? These assassinations that they keep happening, the system at B are triggering kids and people who have been predisposed to being controlled and mind controlled. They find them out.
There was an incident, wasn't there? Do you remember the one with the cinema shooting?
Yeah, I was going to say,
Yeah.
his actual persona didn't look too different to the guy who was in the Aurora cinema.
My friend, through history, if you look into the internet and look through the history on these things, and I've been sent a lot through Brass Check TV,
Yes.
these guys are conscious, and what they're doing, they're sending this stuff out. I watched a documentary the day sent out by one of the guys, and it was about this assassination thing that goes off.
So if they're not lone nuts, all these assassins throughout American history, what are they? Are they all part of this a similar movement, different movements?
Well, it's hard to say. You know, they all, the ones in the 60s all had a common denominator except the Kennedy murders. But if you look at Malcolm X, if you look at Martin Luther King, and if you look at John Lennon, all of them were under heavy CIA surveillance when they were killed. And I, being a former Navy SEAL, understand that before you do an op, you do plenty of surveillance and plenty of intel work to make sure it goes correctly. And the real only common denominator to the whole thing is the CIA.
You think the CIA might have had Lennon killed?
Well, there's a good possibility because Mark David Chapman was very strange.
In the fall of 1980, Mark David Chapman would periodically slip out of bed in the middle of the night while his wife tried to sleep. In the living room of their Honolulu apartment, he would strip off his pajamas, burn candles, and play his old Beatles records. Over and over he chanted, "John Lennon must die, the phony must die," says the Catcher in the Rye.
If you read about how that killing took place, Lennon was under heavy CIA surveillance. Reagan had just won, and Lennon was making a huge comeback at the time, and they thought that he could galvanize the left because he was very liberal. And Chapman, if you look at his background, it's nothing like what the media told us about. The media told us he was infatuated with the Beatles, infatuated with John Lennon, and that's why he killed him. That's not true at all. In fact, he could have cared less about the Beatles. His actual favorite musician was Todd Rundgren, and he hated guns. And yet the night he killed Lennon, he dropped into a professional shooting position, put 5 rounds in Lennon that a drill instructor would be proud of, and then his most strange behavior was when he was done. He had 3 opportunities to escape. He could have either ran into Central Park, he could have got onto the subway a block away and disappeared, or he could have just disappeared on the Manhattan streets. Instead, he backed up into the shadows, dropped the gun, pulled out J.D. Solinger's Catcher in the Rye, and was reading it when the cops arrived.
Governor Ventura, I hear that and I think, so why? Or how, more interestingly? I mean, do you think he wasn't deranged, or do you think that the CIA drugged him?
I think he very well could have been. You know about the MK Ultra program of mind control and all that. That's all documented in the 50s and 60s. There was a good chance, in my opinion, he was what you would call, quote unquote, a Manchurian candidate.
So do you think that stuff works? Because I was never under the impression that they had successfully done that.
Well, I think that it absolutely can work if they have someone for over a year, because hypnosis is a very powerful thing.
They pre-train these guys. These guys have a particular modus operandi. They're all from broken homes. They've all generally got strong mothers. They've all got no father figures. There is a pre-type, and what they do is they get hold of these kids and they train them to be assassins at the point of triggering. And if you look at the film, the Manchurian Candidate, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
There's something going on that they don't realise what's going on because they've been pre-trained. These assassins, if you apparently on the JFK shooting, these assassins, and they've all been proven through history. And what I didn't realise was one of them was Woody Harrelson's dad. Yeah, Woody Harrelson's dad, the actor.
Oh,
his
yes,
father.
his
father
father
was
about
one.
that. Yeah.
Now, if you look at the JFK shooting, apparently Bush was there. All these assassins throughout history were all there. Why? Why were they all there? All congregated around this one shooting. It's impossible for this to be a chance. This has been happening. It's a method of what's going on.
What's your answer to that question? Why?
Do you mean why?
You said why. Why were they all there? What's your answer to that question?
Do you think it's a coincidence that they're all there?
No, I don't.
And I'm asking you. Do you think it would be?
No, I know, but I want you to. I was asking you why.
Yeah, and I'd say to you, if you think that's a coincidence, that all these trained killers through history of time, from the Bush family to all these people, from Harvey Oswald, all these people were around that area at the same time, and you think that's a coincidence and that's not proven. The answer is in itself.
What I'll say as well is when these incidents happen, when the gunmen they're apprehended, you always get the same description by the press of the person, and they're on psychotic drugs, and the loners and this, that, and the other. Which begs the question: is the problem in America, is it a gun problem or is it a drug problem?
Well, actually, mass shooting of the last 20 years has one thing in common, and it's not guns.
Yes, it's drugs. I mean, there's over 4,500 documented media stories around the world of people doing things that appears out of character, but it's about mass killings, etc. And they're all on drugs. And it's not just like we're talking about local weed. We're talking about these powerful drugs that you're
mind-altering ones.
Yes, you're prescribed them.
Did you ever see a film called Jacob's Ladder? Jacob's Ladder was set in Vietnam, and what it was, the Jacob's Ladder was the drug they took, the psychotic drug they took to kill and go to battle was called Jacob's Ladder. Do you know why? They started off and it took you up to a ladder to hell, they said, and took you straight into the fast lane to kill in a psychotic way. These things have gone through through history and time. The Manchurian Candidate saw it where they were just predisposed at some point on trigger. This guy was just doing random things, not even knowing why he does it, but the things that they were doing, and they've trained them, and the drugs are all trigger responses.
You see, Damon was talking about the Catcher in the Rye book. There's a guy, I think his name I'm not sure if it was Mark Chapman, the guy who killed John Lennon.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Now,
same thing, bro.
Yeah.
Right.
Same similar to the guy who tried to assassinate Ronald Reagan as well.
Well,
the same guy, he was under mind-altering drugs as well.
Right. Well, what it is with the Catcher in the Rye, for those who don't understand, it's a book. Salinger wrote this book. J.D. Salinger.
Yeah.
And I think he died a few years ago. And it's not that the book in itself is evil or good. It's what the American government had this program called MK Ultra.
Okay.
And it's about mind control and hypnosis and all that sort of thing. And so think to yourself more like Born Identity, how they train him to be this assassin, take away his mind, give him a new identity. And only because he bangs his head does he realise what he did in the past. Now, when Mark Chapman was reading this book, apparently when he shot John Lennon, remember he was a fan of John Lennon. And he married a woman that was Oriental just like John Lennon, so he was a fan of this man. And one day he woke up, read the book, and in the book there's a trigger. So you know when you go and see a hypnotist at a venue and they say you're under spell, and then they talk to you and stuff like that, and you do all these funny things and you walk like a dog, etc., etc. Then they clip their fingers and you forget what you've done. But at any given time they can say a trigger word that will bring you back under. Saying, So the Catcher in the Rye is a trigger book.
Okay.
It's what the American government had used to trigger people's memories so that they could go deep undercover, normal people, and then trigger it again. You can imagine there'd be normal Joe Blogs minding their own business, doing a normal job, and then they get a letter through the letterbox, and in the letter there'd be a segment from the book Catcher in the Rye, which brings them back to the assassin.
The guy, the last shooting you're talking about, they were speaking to his best friend. His best friend was a black guy, and he said absolutely no chance of him ever doing anything like this. Totally out of the blue, said some weird things, but nothing like would ever trigger him. You know, no problem. All of a sudden, this guy goes off and does this.
You see, the question is the reality is we know that it's triggers and we know that there's 4,500 different cases, but what is the reason?
That's my thought.
Okay, now what they want to do is create what they call a race war, but you know, it will never escalate
like a
to
civil war within the US.
Yes, because you remember, you know, I think it was you pointed out that the Confederate flag is in every state, and you know that was seen as a racist flag.
They're debating whether that should be banned now.
Yeah,
you'd imagine that the fact they're having a debate about that and not debating pork words in the. But anyway, they debate the wrong thing. Just get it actioned.
Yeah.
But you know what is the whole point? The American amendment is the Second Amendment. I think is that you know Americans can bear arms. Now let's understand how much arms we're talking. It's not about these two arms here with my bat wings or bingo wings. It's more a case of there are more guns in America than people.
There's 3 for every Texan person.
Well, let's get the figure bigger so you understand. Because Texas is one state. There are 300 million Americans. There's more guns in America than people. So what the American government want to do is take the guns off the streets. Now, if you take the guns off the streets, what happens next? They can bring in martial law. And then when you bring in, so what they do, they create the problem solution. Now, the beautiful thing about the people of Charleston is they have demonstrated, especially the ones in the church, they have demonstrated this word called love. They've not talked about it. They've actually said they're sorry about what's happened and they forgive the man that has done all this. And that, the Bible says, there's no greater love a person can show than to...
It's sweet in light of the negativity.
Yes. So what people have to do is constant. It's like Dr. Martin Luther King said, whenever they would challenge the people, and people would want to bear arms, he'd say, no, don't do this.
That's right. Yeah.
Gandhi said the same thing. When the British shut the people up, Gandhi would say, don't bear arms. Don't fight back against them. In other words, in this situation, don't rise up and try and fight against the so-called white supremacists or the racist organizations, because they have an agenda. It's the American government has an agenda to get people to say, we must take guns off the streets. The minute you do that, then their next agenda will be unopposed.
And talking about the love that was shown with regards to the shooter is, one of our ZeN members sent out a tweet. Did you see that one? About somebody who'd gone onto his Facebook page. There was only one picture, but this black guy who I think was injured himself in some way. He just had this long...
Steph shared that.
Yeah, it was Steph. It's basically just full of forgiveness. And no matter what you've done, this was before he was caught. God is a God of love. He will redeem you, and it was just heartfelt.
I don't know you. When I searched for your name from the news outlets, it led me here. You're not captured yet, so there's a chance that you may see this message. I don't look at you with the eyes of hatred or judge you by your appearance or race, but I look at you as a human being that made a horrible decision to take the lives of 9 living and breathing people. Children do not grow up with hatred in their hearts. In this world, we are born colorblind. Somewhere along the line, you were taught to hate people that are not like you, and that is truly tragic. You have accomplished nothing from this killing but planting seeds of pain that will forever remain in the hearts of the families that lost their lives and countless hearts around our country. If you're still out there and you have your phone with you, give your heart to Jesus and confess your sins with a heart of forgiveness. He is the only one that can save your soul and forgive you for the terrible act that you have done.
And again, that was a great email, great find, great words. The man who did the crime is a victim as much as the 9.
Yeah,
you see,
he's not consciously doing this.
No, he's on remote control.
Of course.
And you know, these drugs that they're giving people, they are not, to call them powerful is an understatement. You know, you've got to remember the people who were under the spell of Charles Manson, they weren't really in the right mind. They're the ones who killed Sharon Tate back in the day and took the baby out of her stomach. When all that happened, Charles Manson at the time, he said the trigger for him, he was all part of the MK Ultras as well, he said the trigger for him was listening to the Beatles' Helter Skelter album. Now people would say, I've listened to that and it hasn't affected me. Imagine to yourself, they say it affects 1 in a million. There's 300 million people in America. That's 300 people. And if you understand what one crazy person can do, or one person under the influence can do, times it by 300. So these are projects that the American government and the British government would have the same sort of people. The Russians would have the same sort of people who they can tap on at any given time to do these heinous things. Because remember, like Damon pointed out, he travelled over 100 miles. Why would you travel 100 miles to go to a church, sit there for an hour, say, you know what, time to die, type thing, and then reload your gun 5 times? Now, you know, you watch films, you see people pull out their gun and go on out there, Chuck Norris or you know, Clint Eastwood, and shoot people accurately. When you're reloading, it means he wasn't very accurate. To reload 5 times.
Oh yeah, that's
and there's
17 in a clip as well.
Right, and there's nobody in that church group that says, wait a minute, it's time for you to dead.
I did question that too.
If it was a Bible study. Now, if you look at our Bible study, any given time, you have me, you have young man here, you have yous, you've got people that are nameless that weren't mentioned here that hold the cameras. Now, you think to yourself, when you look at the brothers there in that room, imagine to yourself, somebody comes up and says, picks up a gun. You think any one of them brothers is going to run for shelter?
What you're going to hear is,
that's it. And this kid is dead.
This kid is dead.
Yeah. Now, this guy was able to reload 5 times.
Crazy.
So what you've got to do, you have to listen to the narrative. You've got to break the narrative down and ask yourself, wait a minute, the pig story, nonsense. Does this make any sense? And if the answer is no, then there's a problem here.
But also with it as well, what I noticed was he was actually apprehended 200 miles away from where it happened.
Yeah.
And he was also wearing like a knife vest as well.
Yeah.
Can you imagine anyone else being given the opportunity to wear that, be protected from people when you just blasted 9 people?
You see, you know, again, our beautiful sister Stefanato sent a tweet, and it was showing how they arrest a mass murderer and how they arrest a man who sells cigarettes.
A black person.
Yes. and one gets into a chokehold and ultimately dead. Another one looks fantastic, like he's been designed in this wonderful boiler suit that he's wearing.
And £1 million bail, by the way.
Yes.
$1 million. Sorry.
Yes. And I think the problem you've got, you see,
What, they're giving him $1 million bail?
$1 million bail.
So that he's allowed to have bail after killing 9 people.
Yeah, and someone like Suge Knight has done whatever he's done. His was 25 million.
You see?
No, but I just can't get the fact that bail's been granted.
Yeah, exactly.
How does bail get granted or something like that?
And this is the beauty about what we do. We discuss things that nobody else is discussing. And just like Shane pointed that serious point out, how is that possible? And what you've got with the beautiful people of Charleston is that they are standing up and saying we shall not be moved. And then the rest of the world is turning around and says something needs to be done. And what needs to be done, we need to address the leaders that we have as leaders and understand what is their agenda and what they're doing. This beautiful man who was the leader of the church was sitting there conducting a Bible study. So you can tell he wasn't just a man that wanted the fame and the glory. He also sat in the church and was a man giving out the gospel too in a normal Wednesday day. Now the point of the matter is we need people who actually see what's really going on.
Yeah, we do.
Fantastic insight, gents. Thanks, Shane. Thanks, Damon. Thanks, G, and thanks, Cal. And don't forget, you can join in on the conversation. Join us on Twitter, #ZenTV. Until next time.